This right here is the JH F1 made by Dunlop. Put Jimi Hendrix's name on something and it sells. Marketing. You can get them used on Reverb for under $150. I just pulled one up for $133. This over here is the Roger Mayer Axis Fuzz. I don't even think Roger sells them anymore in this rocket enclosure. But you're going to pay $300 to $400 for this right now. Modest Mouse evidently just listed one a few hours ago for $325, I think, was the cheapest one I found on Reverb. Definitely let me know what you like in the comments, but before I share any of my ideas and thoughts on this, let's just hear them. The fuzz is on the entire time, so any changes in gain, even if the sound completely cleans up, will be all from the guitar volume knob. And it's going straight into an amplifier that's turned up fairly loud, and I put an SM57 on it because I wasn't going to blow up a ribbon microphone for a YouTube demo. Although Eddie Kramer did record Jimi using a combination of the Beyerdynamic ribbon and a Neumann condenser. I just wanted to get the sound of the fuzz pedals on live video for you. So here's the JH F1 first. Now let's take a listen to the Roger Mayer Axis Fuzz. I'm going to give you the junk food answers that you want right away, the instant gratification. If you want a fuzz that just sounds good and you can plug into your bedroom setup and have some fun with, get the Dunlop. It's a lot less expensive, it's more readily available, and it's a lot less demanding of the player. If you're going to go out and play in the real world as a pro, get the Roger Mayer. Now, how in the world would any of those opinions be controversial? Life is hard. People have challenges, and I don't like jerks that say you're not good enough for this or you're not good enough for that. Give everybody a fair shot. With that said, this is my favorite pedal. Right hand, left hand. If those are good, everything downstream will be good. If those aren't good, I hope this is purely a fun hobby. And if it is, fantastic. Keep having fun with your hobby. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not good enough for this piece of gear or that piece of gear. I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody who made a ton of money, who's a hobbyist player. Go and have all the 59 strats you want. Go and buy up the bursts. Go ahead and buy a Dumble, embracing your path as a hobbyist collector who's fortunate to be able to afford that equipment. But just know that Jack Pearson is going to play rings around you with a $100 Indonesian Squire Strat. Do I contradict myself? If so, I contain multitudes. But hear me out. The better the gear is, the more invested you are in it, the more it does challenge you and should inspire you to do the very best that you're capable of doing with that gear. But ultimately, and this is the twist, the gear is an intermediate step. I went through a lot of gear, and now I played a $400 Mexican Strat there to prove a point and used maybe a $75 microphone. Personally, I find the Dunlop pedal to be very underwhelming. I find it doesn't clean up with the same kind of clarity and attack. I find that when the fuzz is full on and the volume on the guitar is all the way up, that it's too bass heavy. For lack of a better description, the tone farts out. lose its definition, particularly on chords. And then if you want to go into woman tone land and roll the tone back on your guitar, you've got nowhere to go. And I find that the fuzz just doesn't have the definition, the focus, and the clarity that I prefer in a good fuzz pedal. But I've spent a lot of my life obsessed with great fuzz players, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix. I've spent a lot of time teaching myself and learning how to use a fuzz pedal. A fuzz pedal is an extension of the instrument. It's not just something that you plug in and start making weird noises with. It's something that you can learn to use the same way you learn to play the guitar. Towards those ends, I've seen complaints about Roger's Axis Fuzz online, where people complain that it's too bright and it's too harsh and it's too brash. Well, guess what? That's what I want in a fuzz pedal. I have to be on my A game and I have to rise to the occasion, because if I don't, there's nothing to hide behind. One very quick under-discussed point is, aside from Roger Mayer working closely with Jimi Hendrix, those who would complain that the Axis is too bright and too brash, take into account the cables that Jimi was using. Bill Lawrence, before he passed, had described this as one of the secrets of Jimi's tone. Those cables had a pretty high capacitance, and it rolled a lot of the top end off, so that the lead sound was pretty creamy. And if you watch things like the Stockholm performance, where you hear Jimi step off of the fuzz for a moment, the clean sound straight into the amp was kind of muffled. With the Roger Mayer stuff, I've personally found that it really benefits from being plugged into an amplifier at around stage volume. And from there, if your hands are right and you're playing good stuff, there it is. But I find that if you're a bedroom player at home, and you're just going to go ahead and spend a lot of money on a fuzz pedal, for example, you very well may choose to save a lot of money and get something different and go on and be happy. Another thing to consider is something Roger has said directly himself. The fatal flaw is you get a piece of gear, you plug it in your bedroom, and you think it's going to sound like the record. It doesn't. What you want to hear on a record and what you want to hear in a mix on stage is very different than what you want to hear when you're in a room by yourself with an unaccompanied electric guitar. In a band mix, the bass player and the drummer are already occupying those frequencies. Why in the world are you going for a fat, full-range sound with all this bottom end on the guitar? When I see people on YouTube and they're comparing pedals and it's one sound against the other with no context in a track, that doesn't tell me anything. And I find by far that the Axis Fuzz cuts through the mix and stands out and delivers the goods where the Dunlop just doesn't. You're perfectly worthy of going ahead and getting pro-grade gear, understanding that the Roger Mayer stuff is professional-grade gear. And guess what? When I was starting out, I didn't know how to get a good sound with it. I had to learn. By contrast, if you're a pure hobbyist and you understand that and you don't aspire to ever be more than a hobbyist, don't let anybody make you feel badly about any of it. And please don't ever misunderstand anything I'm saying. Something like the Dunlop is easier to hide behind. And if you don't want a fuzz pedal in particular that's going to particularly challenge you, I think the Dunlop is the better choice. Bear in mind how particular Eric Johnson has always been about his gear. So even when he uses something like the Dunlop Fuzz, well, he's worked with those companies and made a lot of requests to get it exactly the way that he wants it to be. So I hope that's been helpful and also proven several points on several different levels. In the end, they're all just tools. And that's why this isn't a typical gear review channel, and I hope it never becomes one. The guy building your house knows how to use a hammer. If I had to go ahead and use a Dunlop Fuzz right off the shelf at Guitar Center, I could make it work. I prefer the Roger Mayer stuff vastly. Also, MJM Guitar Effects, he's up in Canada, makes beautiful sounding fuzz pedals. But they're all just tools. You're not bound to the gear. You get to the point where it's nice to have that gear, but if it all went away overnight, you'd be okay and be able to make it work and still get your job done. Desire is the engine that fuels creativity, and you'll get there if you have the desire. Everything else really comes down to your hands. If you'd like to really improve your sound, you need to make it a central goal. It became a pivotal central goal for me 20 years ago. And I hope that if that's your goal, that you make a little bit of progress on that every single day. It's quite possible to do so. But don't confuse the gear with the tone itself. The tone's going to start in your hands, and then the gear is going to help you bring that tone outward. It is a whole lot of fun. I'm over 30 years into this, and I'm still having fun. So by all means, please keep having fun yourself, and I'll see you again the next time.